Hello everybody. Today I can prepare for my trigonometry test by practicing. Let's get to it. Sketching radian angles. Well, I don't think in radians, at least not at this level. I think in degrees. So if I see radians, I convert to degrees by multiplying by 180 over pi. You need to know to convert to degrees, you multiply by 180 over pi. So I have 6 times alpha x 180 over pi. I have 344 to the nearest degree. So I know it goes 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. It's got to be between 0 and 360, closer to 360. It's choice 1. Number 3, it's telling me that theta passes through a point. So I'm going to sketch a grid. Whenever I'm asked for trig ratios in this course, I always want to sketch a triangle on the grid. Negative 3, 4 is here. X-axis, always x-axis, origin. If it's negative 3, 4, this is 3, this is 4. You can use a grid if you want. If it's a triple, use a triple. Yes, this is a triple. 3, 4, 5. Triples you're responsible for. 3, 4, 5. 5, 12, 13. Those are the main ones. 7, 24, 25. 8, 15, 17. There are more, but those are the ones I'd like you to know, especially those. Now that I have that, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. 3 over 5, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. 4 over 5, tangent's opposite over adjacent. 4 over 3. The reciprocals of those, secant's the reciprocal of cosine, cosecant's the reciprocal of sine, and cotan is the reciprocal of tan. And now you got 4 of them wrong because you need to check the quadrants. All students take calculus. In this quadrant, sine is positive, so these are good, and everything else is negative. You can have one open response like this. I'm sorry, you will have one open response like this. It could also be multiple choice. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a multiple choice one now that starts differently. So there's 3 ways this can start. It can start where it passes through a point. It can start with a trig ratio, or it can start with a circle. So we'll go over each of them. Let's do a multiple choice one now, though. It's really the same process. You're just not finding all 6. You're just finding 1. Trig ratio grid, quadrant 3. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent is 3, hypotenuse is 4. This is not a triple. Since it's not a triple, it's close to being a triple, just the 4's in the wrong spot. I have to do Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. 3 squared plus b squared equals 4 squared. 9 plus b squared equals 16. B squared equals 7. B equals radical 7. They all start differently, but they all end the same way. Once you have 2 values in the triangle, they're all the same. Now, I don't need to go through every single one, because I just want sine. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which is radical 7 over 4. Don't forget your signs. All students take calculus. In this quadrant, only tangent's positive, so sine is negative radical 7 over 4. And then we've got the circle. I'll do the one with all 3, why not? For a circle, what you need to know is that the radius is the hypotenuse. It's in quadrant 3. The radius is 4, so that's your hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the radius. The x-coordinate is 2. It's not a triple, so I do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. 2 squared plus b squared equals 4 squared. 4 plus b squared equals 16. Move it down. Minus 4, b squared equals 12. B is radical 12. You can leave it as radical 12. You don't have to reduce the radical. And now that I have that, again, it's the same as the rest of them. SOHCAHTOA, cosine is 2 over 4. You could reduce it or not, either way. Radical 12 over 4. Radical 12 over 2. The reciprocals of those, 4 over 2. 4 over radical 12. 2 over radical 12. We don't want a radical in the denominator. So I rationalize. So we have 4 rad 12 over 12. 2 rad 12 over 12. You could reduce them if it's open response. Doesn't matter. If it's multiple choice, you might need to. I'm not concerned about that. What I am concerned about is the signs. All students take calculus. Quadrant 3, only tangent is positive. So tangent and its reciprocal are positive. Everything else is negative. Again, I'm not really concerned about the reducing open response. If it's multiple choice and it's reduced, then it is. And if it's multiple choice and it's not reduced, then it's not. So there's 3 different ways it starts with a circle. If it's a circle, the radius is the hypotenuse. If they give you a trig ratio, you just substitute those values of SOHCAHTOA in. And if they give you a point that it passes through, then you put those on the grid and do your triangle from there. Once you have your triangle, they're all the same. So let's move forward. My computer's getting a little upset at me. It's getting a lot upset at me. Okay, next up is exact value. Exact value is your QSFR. So first of all, you need to know your special table. 30, 45, 60, sine, cosine, tangent, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 3. All the first 2 rows are over 2. On the third row, only the first one gets a denominator of 3. Everything on top gets radicals. I don't need to put the radical on the 1 because radical 1 is 1. So we need that. If I'm in radians, I want to convert to degrees. Times 180 over pi. Pi's cancel. I have 5 times 180 over 6. Use the calculator if you need to. That's 150. I go to my grid. I sketch 150, 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. There's your 150. Reference angle is 30. QSFR. Q's not too important. That's quadrant 2. All students take calculus. I'll do the F first. It's cosine. And in that quadrant, cosine is negative. The reference angle is 30. I have negative cosine of 30. Cosine of 30 is radical 3 over 2. So it is negative radical 3 over 2. Choice 3. The shortcut for this, which kind of works and it kind of doesn't, you can type in cosine of 5 pi over 6. Make sure you should always be in radian mode. You can type in cosine of 5 pi over 6. You get that. You can type in each answer and see which one matches up. It's got to be negative. It's obviously not 1/2 because 1/2 is 0.5. If I type in negative radical 3 over 2. It matches up. Will it always work? If it's multiple choice, probably. I mean, they could ask questions in different ways, but I'd rather you do it with QSFR, but the shortcut should work for this test. All right, which brings us to graphing. Amp, sine, freak X, shift. You hear me excitement in my voice? Now we get to graphing. Amp, sine, freak X, shift. The other piece of information that we need is the period, which is 2 pi over the frequency. So my amp is what's in front. That's 3. It's negative cosine. Freak is 2. Shift is negative 4. Period is 2 pi over the frequency, which is pi. So I make 4 dashes, equally spaced. The period goes at the end of the 4th dash. My shift, my midline is negative 4. My amplitude is 3. So from the midline, I go up 1, 2, 3, and down 1, 2, 3. If you want, you can make dashed lines at all those values, because every point will have to be at one of those y values. It's a negative cosine, so you need to know that negative cosine goes bottom, midline, top, midline, bottom. So from 0, from the y-axis, bottom, next dash, midline, next dash, top, next dash, midline, next dash, bottom. This is the kind of thing, if you know how to do it or you don't. If you know how to do it, you're good. It's always the same thing. There's no twist on it. Find your values, amp, sine or cosine, positive or negative, frequency, shift. Find your period at the end of the 4th dash. Apply your shift, count your amplitude up, graph the appropriate wave. If you are writing an equation, amp, sine, freak X, shift, if it's multiple choice, it's easiest to cheat. By cheat, I mean, is this wave a sine or cosine, positive or negative? It's a positive sign because it's starting at the midline and going up, so those are out. Amp, sine, freak X, shift, we can focus on one of those things. The shift is the midline 5 or 9. It's 9. That's your answer. All right, if it's a multiple choice, you can just pick a couple of easy components like the type of wave or the shift or the amplitude, and you should be able to cross out all the choices that are wrong and get your answer from there. Why not? Let's go over this. If it wasn't multiple choice, no, it's not, because that's what's coming next. If it's not multiple choice, don't forget your y equals amp, sine, freak X, shift. I need to start by finding the midline and the frequency. So let's start with the midline. The midline is the min plus the max over 2. So that's 2, that's 6, 7, 8. So it's 2 plus 8 over 2, which is 5. You might be able to eyeball it, or you might not. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't, but that will always work. Now the frequency is 2 pi over the period. The period is where the first full wave ends. This went midline, bottom, midline, top, midline. That is the end of the wave. The period is 6. So the frequency is 2 pi over 6, which reduces to pi over 3. So now, let's go. Amp, sine, freak X, shift. Amp is 1, 2, 3. It's a negative sign because it goes from the midline and goes down. So I throw negative in front. Freak is, I found out to be pi over 3. X, shift is 5. Done. Find the midline, min plus max over 2. Find the frequency, 2 pi over the period. The period is where the first full wave ends. Pop your values into amp sign, freak X shift, amp sign, freak X shift. A couple of the modeling problems. When they give you a real life example, it's best to draw a little picture. Shift is 2450. Amplitude is 250, so I can do 2450 plus 250, 2450 minus 250, that's 2200, that's 2700. It's a positive sign, so it's going to look like that. And the period is 2 pi over the frequency. So the period is 2 pi over 2 pi over 5. 2 pi over 1 times 5 over 2 pi. Keep, change, flip. When I'm divided by a fraction, my period is 5. I got more than enough information that I need at this point. It's asking for the maximum value, 2700. It does say, explain what it represents. Well, Y represents a person's lung capacity, so the maximum capacity is 2,700 milliliters. Maximum lung capacity is 2,700 milliliters. So if it's asking for a minimum or a maximum or period or something relating to the period, draw a little picture. Once you have your little picture, you'll have the information that you need. This one's asking for minimum. Same thing, you'll do the same process. So let's take the minimum instead of the maximum. This is the one problem where you really want to go to the calculator as far as graphs go. If it wants to know what's happening to cosine of theta from negative pi over 2 to 0, it's easiest to just go to y equals, type in cosine of theta. I can't type in theta, so I type in cosine of x. Let's start with zoom 6, but I'm not going to do zoom 6. I'm going to go to my window. It wants to see it from negative pi over 2 to 0. So my x min is going to be negative pi divided by 2. Alpha x isn't working here for whatever reason, so just do it as division. And my x max is going to be 0. It'll automatically make the pi into a decimal, that's fine. And then graph and look at it. What's happening? Well, it's getting bigger, it's increasing. It's starting at 0, it's going to 1. That thing is increasing from 0 to 1. I'm looking at the y values, it's increasing from 0 to 1. So if it wants to know what's happening to a graph between two specific values, just input those values into the window and look at the graph and tell me what it's doing. You'll have one of those. This is technically a review topic. We're applying trig to it, but it doesn't really affect anything. It's more of a review. This is the review question that's going to be on your exam. Am I frozen? I'm not sure. No, I don't know. I'm half frozen. Average rate of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It wants it from June to October. Well, January is month 1, June is month 6, October is month 10. You are expected to know the numbers associated with each month. Go to y equals, type in the equation, 24.9 sine 0.5 instead of m, we do x minus 2.05 plus 55.25. I go to my table, 6 to 10, 6 is 75.504, 10 is 59.992. y2 minus y1, bottom minus top, over bottom minus top. Pop that into the calculator. Alpha x, 59.992 minus 75.504 over 10 minus 6 to the nearest hundredth, negative 3.88. Average rate of change can apply to any function. It doesn't change. It's just y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If they give you an equation, you type it into y equals. The fact that this was sine instead of an absolute value function or an exponential function or a log function doesn't really affect anything. Type it into the calculator, pop it into y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then we get to the 4 point. We did 6 points. The one that has to be a 4 point because the third question for the ones we did were all different. This way it's consistent. You know exactly what you're going to see. The first question is going to be to graph. So to graph anything, amp, sine, freak x, shifts. Amp is 260. That's what's in front. The negative cosine. Freak is pi over 15. Shift is 30. Period is 2 pi over the freak. Keep, change, flip. P is 30. 4 dashes equally spaced. 1, 2, 3, 4. Period at the end of the fourth dash. Now my y, again, it helps to make a little picture whenever you have a real life situation. So if my shift is 30 and my amplitude is 26, well, 30 plus 26 is 56. 30 minus 26 is 4. I'm sorry, 260. Fix that mistake quick. 30 plus 260 is 290. And that's not right. So let's just go over number 24 instead because there's a flaw with that problem. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I see what the problem is. In fact, yeah, let's just go over a different problem instead. I'll fix that on the review sheet. There was just a flaw with that problem. I apologize. But again, the process is still the same. So I'll just go through that process again. Amp, sine, freak x, shift. Amp is 13. Negative cosine. Freak is 0.8 pi. Shift is 13. Period is 2 pi over the freak. You can use a calculator for this one. No fraction. We get 2 pi over 0.8 pi. I know that the pi's are going to cancel, but the calculator will do it for me. P is 2.5. So I go to my graph, 4 dashes. 1, 2, 3, 4. P is 2.5, so 2.5 goes at the end of the last dash. Again, it's helpful to make a little sketch. The midline is 13. The amp is also 13, so 13 plus 13 is 26. 13 minus 13 is 0. So I know I have to go up to 26. Doesn't look like there's 26 boxes there. So I'm going to make every box worth 2. So this would be 2, 4, 6. I like to label every other box just to keep it neater. 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32. I'm above where I need to be. Let's find my values now. 0 is important. 13 is important. So that's going to be a little bit hard for me to do on this little grid, but it's in between those boxes. And 26 is important. So now it is a negative cosine. So negative cosine is bottom, midline, top, midline, and bottom. Draw the curve. I labeled my period. Done. Now it says to determine the period, which I already did, and interpret what the period represents in the context of the problem. So the period is your x-axis is your time, so it's the time it takes to complete one full cycle in general. So this problem is talking about a tire on a bike. So it takes 2.5 seconds for the bike wheel to make one full rotation. And that's it. That's what you'll be asked to do. You'll be asked to graph it. You'll be asked to identify the period, which you have to do for the graph anyway, and explain its meaning in the context of the problem. So that's it. You know what you got to do. There's kind of a lot of stuff here. I didn't put much review on. The only review I put on was average rate of change. Make sure you know what you need to do. Do it. Goodbye.